So let's first look at what is it that makes a good speaker great? Well, I found it has more to do with confidence than anything else. Let me ask you this. Which is more important in any endeavor you're doing? Being competent or being confident? Confident. Now that's interesting, because don't you need to be good at what you do? Eventually. Here's what we find. People who are extremely competent but not confident are not believable. People who are extremely confident but not competent, well, they're usually the president of the organization, but what we find is that the more confident you are, as long as you're willing to get feedback, as Chris talked about earlier, you slowly build the competence. I would much rather listen to a speaker who is tremendously confident and only somewhat competent than the other way around. Have you ever seen a boring speaker? What does that feel like when you're seeing and experiencing that boring speaker?
Church.
Well, no, it's interesting. So it's interesting, somebody just said church. And here's one of the things I've learned. You can learn more from going to church about speaking than just about anywhere else there is, whether or not you're religious. I was not raised Christian. I am not a practicing Christian. I love going to church because I watch to see, number one, how well are they connecting with their audience, an audience that's already passionate about their topic, and number two, how authentic are they? I've seen some really bad church sermons. I've seen some amazing church sermons. In fact, Candace and I, Candace Fitzpatrick, who I've worked with in Core Clarity, we had a guy come through our facilitator training about a year ago whose background was in the church. He was a preacher by trade, and he was moving into a business setting. And we had to tell him, all right, now, Kenneth, you're great. You're going to scare people. He had to bring it down a little bit. He had to get to know his audience. He had the confidence. He was building the competence to know his audience. Hugely important. So let's talk about the biggest reason why people are not confident, and that's fear. You know, they've done loads of studies about what is it that people are afraid of. The biggest fears people have, and do you know what the top two are always? Public speaking and death. In that order. People would literally rather be in the coffin than talking about the person in the coffin. I don't think that's a good move. You see, one of the things that we've learned is that people are fearful of speaking for totally irrational reasons. When we say to them, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? I could bomb. So you bomb. So what? It's not going to end your career, well, unless you're a professional speaker, and then it might, I realize. But here's the thing. It's never as bad as you think it is. One of my dear friends and mentors, and you will meet her later today, is Karen Cortell-Reisman. And one of the things that she talks about is we always give 3 speeches. We give the speech that we are giving on the way to the speech. We give the speech, and then we give the speech on the way home that we wished we'd given. Guess what? The audience only knows the middle one. And not only that, the audience doesn't care about the one you plan to give or the one you wish you'd give. The audience cares about the one you gave. Don't be so hard on yourself. So what are some things we can do to alleviate some of the fear and stress that all of us have, whether we are beginners or advanced speakers? What are some things we can do? Practice. You know, I took piano lessons as a kid, and one of the things I hated to do was practice. I loved going to the recital, but the problem with the recital is if you didn't practice, you didn't do so good. You had to practice. And over the course of time, the more I practiced, the better I got. I don't play piano anymore. I didn't have the discipline to continue to practice. However, I sing. And I go to rehearsal once a week with my chorus, Resounding Harmony, because when we deliver our concert, we want it to be great. We don't want it to be off the cuff. We want to make sure that it is planned and organized so that our audience gets the best of what we can give them. It's the same with us as speakers. So I'm going to give you 6 steps to being absolutely amazing every time you speak. Are you ready? Prepare. 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 Wait for it. Practice, practice, practice. You gotta do all 6 steps. What happens if you skip step 4? You're not gonna be as prepared and as rehearsed as you need to be. Now some of you are going, but if I practice and I rehearse, then it's gonna be stale, it's gonna be scripted. Then for you, the practice part is walking around your hotel room delivering your speech, and every time it's a little bit different, and that's okay. For others of you, you want to make sure it's just right each time. Which way is right? Both of them. All of them. Every potentiality is right. You need to prepare in the way that works for you. You need to practice in the way that works for you. But you've got to prepare and practice. What are some other things we can do to deal with some of that fear and stress? What was that? Pray. Absolutely. No matter who it is you pray to, pray. What that really means for me is be connected to whatever your universe is, whatever it is that helps you feel good about the setting. So do I pray before I speak? Yeah. But not only do I pray to God, but I pray to Grandma Sarah. Grandma Sarah, who Kara mentioned was my 101-year-old grandma. I know that every time I get up to speak, she's up there keeping an eye on me. Like, Grandma Sarah, I'm going to go out there soon. Can you just send some good vibes down? And she does, which is nice, except when my brother Joe, who's also up there in heaven, is kind of bugging her with, you know, hey, Grandma, let's go do something else. But she's with us. So yeah, prayer. Prayer works for a lot of us. What else can you do to deal with some of that fear? Breathe. Oh my, you know, this is the funniest thing. We know we're supposed to breathe, so we breathe, and we breathe, and we breathe, and then we get ready to speak, and we hold our breath. You have to keep breathing. Breathing is good. Normal, natural breathing is even better. In fact, here's a little tip that I learned years ago in a stress management class. It's called 5-3-5. Breathe in for 5 counts, hold it for 3 counts, breathe out for 5 counts. Do that once or twice before you're coming out to speak. And it relaxes your body, it relaxes your mind. Now for some of you, that's all you gotta do. For some of you, there may be something you might wanna do before that. Here's what I do, especially if it's a large group. I will be backstage, and when they're getting ready to introduce me, I am literally backstage jumping up and down, just to get the blood going. Now I know you can tell I'm not a high energy person to begin with. But for me, the adrenaline is what helps me stay focused. For other people, that might make them unfocused. But I do that, and then I'm introduced, and I come out, and I start. And I don't know if you've noticed this with now myself, Chris, and then myself again. But when we don't start to speak way over here, we get centered. We connect to our audience. We start. Now, why are we doing that? From the standpoint of building confidence, why are we doing that? It helps you get centered. It helps your audience focus in on you. And let me ask you this. Who most wants you to be successful when you speak? Your audience. Who probably least thinks you're going to be successful when you speak? You. The difference between this and a comedy club is typically there are no hecklers out here. The audience wants us to be successful, so when we realize that, some of the fear and the stress goes away. The other thing that you can do is look for what I call your nurturer. Now, what do I mean by a nurturer? What are they doing in the audience as you begin to speak? They're nodding. Some of them are nodding because they're going, oh yeah, I love what you're saying, that totally resonates. And some of them are going, you can do this. I believe in you, you can do it. But find your nurturer and just check in with your nurturer every so often. You all already know that you want to spend some time with different people in the room, that you want to give eye contact all around. You're going to find people all around the room who are your nurturers. They're just naturally. They are naturally effusive with their love for you, even though they have never met you. Use them. Let them help you get energized when you're standing up here. What else can you do to deal with some of that fear? Yeah. Stand up and say it nice and loud because I know what you're doing. I love it. Yeah, go around and get to know some folks in the audience. You know what that does for them is they begin to see you and connect to you. But the more important thing is, what does it do for you? You have some friends in the audience now. You have people that you can start to feel comfortable with. And when you've connected to some of them that are not natural nurturers become natural nurturers in the moment. Like, oh, that guy came over and talked to me before, and I'm going to nod for him. They don't do it like consciously, but it happens. So yeah, get to know your audience in advance. What else can you do? Let's hear like 3 more things. Yeah, nice and loud.
Do a great workout.
Do a great workout. Yeah, keep your body engaged and energized beforehand. If I have time, I will go get on the treadmill the morning of a speech because it gets my juices flowing and I feel good. If I can't, I make sure that I'm walking the room and I'm getting energized that way to make sure that I feel good about this, because although most of what's got to come out for me is my voice and my heart, every part of my body has to feel good if I'm going to deliver greatness for you. What else? Way in the back. Stand up loud. Yes, this is something we call pre-trip the room. Now, pre-trip is often used just to mean check your technology. Does it all work? Is it working with? But here's what I do. And I've been doing this for 15 years without fail. I go into the room either the night before or the morning of. I get into the space and I deliver my first line. Because my first line, I always know what the first line's going to be. I don't necessarily know what's coming next, but I always know my first line. So I came into this room this morning. I was in here before I think any of you were even, some of you hadn't gone to bed yet, and I was already here. And I said, picture it. You have just walked into the, and that's all I need to do, but I've now delivered the speech once in the setting. Years ago when I was in college, I used to do study skills workshops. I think that was when I began to realize I wanted to train. And one of the things we used to teach our students when we were doing the study skills workshops was, once they post the final exam schedule, I went to a very large school, Penn State, which I'm proud to say, I'm sure a few of you are Pennsylvanians in here. Yeah, here you go! Penn State! But a lot of times the classes were in one space, and then the final exam was in a different space. And what we used to tell students was that the week before final exams, once they post the final exam schedule, go to the room where your test is going to be and study there. Because you've now been in the space before you are then in that stressful situation of delivering your kind of content back on the test. It's the same thing as a speaker. Go to the space and deliver a little bit. Get comfortable with your space. It's your space. Do you stand up here or do you stand down there? I got feedback many years ago from a legend in this industry who has since passed away. Her name was Dottie Walters. She was a Speakers Bureau expert extraordinaire. And I happened to be doing a showcase where she had been invited by someone else on the showcase to deliver. And she came over to me afterwards and she said, first of all, you're great. I was like, that's really nice. I love that Dottie Walters told me that, but she probably says that to everyone. She said, but let me give you one piece of advice. I don't know if you realize this, but you're short. I said, Dottie, that's not advice. She said, because of your energy, you must use a platform when it's there. I said, but I love to go work the room. She said, you can work the room, but not first. You got to start on the platform. You have to establish credibility. And once you've done that, you have permission to go work the room a little bit. Now I will spend, because this is such a long room, and I have not gotten any taller than when Dottie told me this, I will spend most of my time up here so that you can see me and interact with me. If this room were set up differently, I would be working the room more. But it's just as important to the folks standing in the back that they can see and connect with me as the ones in the front. So I tend to stay on the platform. This was a hard thing to learn because I am a trainer by choice. I learned how to train before I learned how to speak. Trainers aren't typically up on a platform. They are usually in the group. And so this was a learning piece for me, but it was great advice. You will get lots of great advice. Some of it will be appropriate and some of it will be not. That's okay. You're going to learn that over the course of time. I have learned that anything Glenna Salisbury tells me, I do. But not everybody else. So you have to know how to collect that and use it. One more fear or stress buster, all the way in the back there. Yeah, stand up and share those. Self-talk. When you are getting ready to go out and deliver your presentation, I need you to picture what it looks like when you're done. Now, for some of you, that means, I just got a standing ovation. For me, the visual that I use when I speak before I get out is the visual that many of you saw at the end of Chris's speech when she stood here and there was a line of people waiting to visit with her. I don't know my speech is successful if I get a standing ovation. I know they enjoyed it. I know it's successful when they come up to me afterwards and tell me what they got that they're going to apply. So that's what I visualize. For some of you, you could just visualize, I finally get to have that cocktail I promised myself. Which, by the way, I am so glad nobody offered this one as one of your fear and stress relievers, to go to the cocktail lounge the night before. Not a good idea. But what is a good idea is hydrating the night before. One of my musical vocal coach for many years was a man named Dr. Timothy Seelig. And he teaches and preaches that you have to hydrate the day before you begin to sing or speak. Because for it to get to the cellular level, to this area, you need to have it in your system already. So I always recommend start hydrating the day before. The dehydrating factors, of course, are the coffee and the Diet Coke that all of us are drinking anyway. So make sure you've got some water in you. And no cocktails until after your speech. You want to be sharp. You want to be ready. So what about notes? Should I have notes? What do you think? It's interesting. There was a time period where no speaker used notes. They got up here and they delivered. And guess what? I didn't find them any more effective than the ones who had a few notes. That maybe had, as Chris mentioned, the Nito Quabain cardstock card where he could then look at his watch. I love that story. But he has his notes on cardstock. By the way, write this down. Cardstock is your friend. Never, ever, ever put your notes on flimsy paper. It goes on cardstock. The handout that you have in the purple section, the entire purple section is on one sheet front and back on this piece of cardstock. So if I need notes, I can grab it, I can say a couple things to you, and you're not going to mind if I'm engaging enough that I went and looked at my notes or interacted with my notes while we were working. Notes are fun. Now, by the way, where are my notes right now? They're right there. I'm just making sure I'm following what you're following. I have a few extra little notes off to the side. I've got a note here next to fear and stress. Audience wants you to be successful. I write that one because it's one that I don't always remember to say, and so I just want to make sure I catch it. But on this particular segment, I always do it as interactive as I just did. So every time I do it, different tips come out from the audience. I don't always cover everything I plan to cover, and that's okay.